Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
All right, good morning. I'd like to call the MPO Policy Committee meeting to order and remind you that this meeting is being live streamed. We do have a few housekeeping items as we begin. For the members that are here in person, in order for the online attendees to hear you, we do ask that you unmute your microphone when speaking. We also ask that you kindly identify yourself when you are making a motion or seconding a motion to ensure that the secretary can capture who is making such motion. For those attending in person, we do ask that you complete the sign-in sheet located in the hallway before you leave, if you have not done so upon arrival. And if you wish to make a public comment, please fill out the public comment form and return it to a staff member if you wish to be called upon at the conclusion of the meeting. For those who are participating via Zoom, we ask that you please keep your microphone muted unless you are called upon to speak. When appropriate on the agenda, we will request comments from those online, and you can indicate your desire to speak via the chat box. Staff is monitoring the Zoom, so we will recognize you when it is your time to speak. With that, Erin, could you please call the roll?
Thank you. I know we have a couple of members who've requested just OMA compliant reasons to join us virtually here. So we will acknowledge and let you into the meeting after the initial roll call here. So I'm going to start by just calling agencies. And if you are not the designated agency lead, if you could just identify yourself during this roll call. Thank you. IDOT.
Yeah.
11. Okay. CDOT.
Christian Murphy here on behalf of the Town Attorney Commissioner.
Thank you. Just a reminder to use your microphones. CMAP, Frank Beal.
Here.
CMAP, President Brawley. Class 1 Railroads.
I'm Edenson for the Class 1 Railroads.
Thank you. Cook County.
Here.
Council of Mayors.
Jeff Shelkey here.
CTA.
Molly Poppy here for Dorval Carter.
Thank you. DuPage County. FHWA.
John Paul Kohler, representing Chris Hall, Acting Division Administrator.
Thank you. FTA.
Mark Kane representing Kelly Brookins.
Thank you. Illinois Tollway. Kane County.
Tom Rickert, representing County Board Chair, Pirog.
Thank you. Kendall County. Lake County.
Shane Schneider on behalf of County Board Chair Hart.
McHenry County.
Scott Hennings on behalf of Chairman Bueller.
Thank you. Metra.
Metra Jim Derwinski.
Pace.
Eric Luan on behalf of Chairman Kwasniewski.
Thank you. RTA. And
Leanne Reddenty. Oh, sorry.
oh, no worries. Thank you. And Will County.
Okay, we did receive requests for virtual participation today. That will be for our members, Secretary Omer Osman, RTA Leanne Redden, and Scott Gangler to participate in today's meeting virtually. These requests were made in compliance with the Open Meetings Act and do require a majority vote of this body by voice vote. With that, can I receive a motion to approve virtual participation? Thank you, Frank. And a second?
Second.
Mayor, thank you. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. Motion passes. Let the secretary mark them as present and be able to vote on matters of the committee. And now, Mr. Secretary, I will turn it over to you to continue chair of the meeting. Thank you.
Yes, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Vice Chair Kellum. I am glad I'm able to participate. My apologies for not being there in person. I have missed the last one too, being out of the state. So hopefully the next one I'll make it up there in person. Looking at the agenda, I see no changes to the agenda, but I do have quite some remarks to make here this morning. First, if you haven't seen the news lately, there is a couple of news.
Have a deliverable probably that we could review.
Ask if you're participating remotely, if you could make sure that you're muted, please. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate that. First, if you haven't seen the news, there are a couple of new faces starting soon at the FHWA Illinois Division. Chris Hall's name was mentioned. He's not here today with us, but I do appreciate him leading the office in the interim since DA Schneider left us a few months ago. But starting at the end of this month, the new DA will be joining us here. His name is Rashawn Tolliver, the Illinois Division Administrator for the Federal Highway Administration, FHWA. A little bit of background about Varshawn. He served in Missouri Division and the Colorado Division as the Deputy Division Administrator, and he played an integral role in advancing multi-billion-dollar federal highway program. Also, related to FHWA, John Paul Dipler was selected to fill the Metropolitan Planning Specialist position in the Chicago Urban Satellite Office. If you recall, that was John Donovan's previous position. Mr. Dipler currently serves as the Principal Transportation Planner for the Region 1 Planning Council. Also, John Paul will be effective on April 7, 2024. Finally,
Will be retired.
no, this is, okay. Finally, many of you are aware that John Paul Keller, who we just heard joining us, is retiring. John Paul has contributed immensely to the Illinois transportation in many meaningful ways over the course of his career, which is over 40 years. I wish him all the best in his retirement. We are fortunate enough to have a little overlap with his replacement, Andy Brickenhall, who is also here today, I hope with us. Related to IDOT, we have been doing some hiring as well. Right next door to the District 1 is District 2 and 3, that's what you call Region 2, out of Dixon and out of Ottawa. So we have recently selected Tricia Thompson, starting at the regional engineer covering both of these districts. Good news yesterday, the exciting announcement of the Reconnecting Communities grant. Congratulations to the winners in Illinois, including the City of Chicago for Reconnecting Chicago West Side Communities Plan, CTA, for the Blue Line, Post Park Branch, Kedzie Avenue to Pulaski Station track improvement. And also the City of Rockport for the Whitman Street interchange reconfiguration. Collectively, I think we had a total of 120 million, slightly over 120 million dollars or so. We are very excited to hear today about the Climate Action Plan, and it is obvious intersection with the transportation sector. IDOT, as a department, have been thinking about these intersections, especially in light of a recent US DOT rulemaking, adding a federal performance measure requiring states and MPOs to set non-binding reduction target for greenhouse gas emissions on the national highway system. I'm going to tell you that we are fully supportive of this effort. And as such, on February 1st, we set a 2.6% statewide reduction target for tailpipe CO2 emission from 2022 to 2026. I'm excited to learn more about the CMAP effort to set the region's target, which will inform and benefit from the ongoing climate action planning work. I'm also excited for CMAP to kick off the regional transportation plan and for CMAP's partnership to address future transportation needs for this region. IDOT staff are working closely with the General Assembly on possible legislation this session. So we do welcome discussion today about those items CMAP is pursuing. That concludes my remark. With that, I'm going to move on into agenda item 3, which is the approval of the minute, which is being attached to the CMAP document you have in front of you, or maybe on your computer. So with that, can I get a motion to approve the January 11, 2024 meeting minutes?
This Killen so moved.
Second.
Second, Mayor Shilkey.
Thank you. Is there any discussion?
No discussion in the room here.
Right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. So the motion carries. With that, we'll move into item 4, which is the CMAP announcement. And we're gonna start with the executive director's report. So Executive Director Alman, if you would.
Thanks so much, Secretary Osman. A few notes of interest for the committee this morning. Our call for projects for technical assistance is currently open. You know, one of our core values here is to foster collaboration, and I think this program really highlights how we do that with our community partners across the region. You know, we always partner and have always partnered with RTA for maybe not in the very first year, but it's been over a decade that we've been partnering with RTA on this call for projects to really think about the comprehensive nature of support that we offer to communities across our shared region here. And so communities, if they're interested and you know any, should apply soon. The deadline for the applications is noon on Friday, March 22nd. And just to remind you, these programs and projects help communities plan for major capital projects, strengthen transportation connections, really thinking about addressing safety concerns locally, and just generally help our region be more successful and livable here. So right now, a couple of the projects that are ongoing, our team is working in Chinatown on a program that helps them think about how they implement the plans that they already have. We're supporting the village of Dixmoor with a capital improvement plan. Calumet City, we're working on a sub-area plan for them. And then also we've recently completed a pavement management project in the city of Diamond. If you do have any questions about the project or projects and project submissions, or if you're talking with anybody who's interested, don't hesitate to reach out to myself or our staff. Our website has plenty of information this year. We do plan to announce the final list of projects funded early this summer. So again, thanks to RTA for hosting the applications this year. It is a lot of work to receive all those applications, divvy them up, and get the program started for review. Also, I wanted to mention to you that we are in the process of piloting another iteration of our household travel survey. Many of you are aware that we offer, we do region-wide travel demands modeling for the region. And this survey really does help us ground truth that information. We do this survey about every 10 years, but recognizing that maybe things have changed and they're changing faster than we're able to get our arms around. One of the things that we want to do in this survey is really beta test the survey and really understand how it's going to work for us. So we're in the process of sort of rethinking how often we need to do these surveys, how detailed they need to get into, and how they can really help us inform making better decisions through our travel demand modeling services that we provide here. So this April, we'll be doing a small pilot of the travel survey, really to make sure that the tool is working for us before we do a full launch later this year. And the focus of this survey is really to better understand the post-pandemic shifts that we've experienced across the region. So if you do hear from constituents or stakeholders across the region, we will be reaching out to a selection of the region to participate in this process, but wanted to make sure that you all are aware ahead of that April launch of the pilot for the household travel survey. And then also just to echo some of the remarks that Secretary Osman made here this week, President Biden announced his fiscal year 2025 budget. We are excited to see that it includes funding for CTA's Red Line Extension project. Again, a project that's been in our long range plans for a while, adding about 5.6 miles to the Red Line from 95th Street to the furthest extent of the city of Chicago. The groundbreaking, I think, if I'm not mistaken, expected later this year, Molly. At some point in the near future. Thank you. You know, it is a regionally significant investment in our region, and really understanding the importance of this. It was in the 2040 plan, it's in the 2050 plan, it's in our regional infrastructure investments and jobs act priorities booklet again. So we're thrilled to have this level of investment in our region's transportation network. Again, you know, recognizing too that we've received recent Reconnecting Neighborhoods project funding. Again, these are the types of funds that I think are going to help us continue to make this region can have a high quality of life, and recognizing that there are things that we can and should be doing to improve equity and equitable investments in all of our communities. So very excited about those announcements that were made earlier this week here. So I think with that, those were the brief remarks that I wanted to make. I'm happy to answer any questions of members of the committee this morning, but I'll pause. If there are no questions, we'll move on next to the CMAP board update and Leanne Redden. All right, no questions in the room. I'll pass it over to Leanne. Oh, I'm sorry, Council of Mayors first.
Oh, I was gonna say, we're doing council first, but
Nope,
yeah,
Council of
I'll
Mayors.
let Mayor Shelkey go first.
Mayor Shilkey, thank you.
Thank you. I don't really have that much to report. The Council of Mayors was supposed to meet on January 23rd, but that meeting got canceled for weather and other things that were going on. So we've rescheduled that meeting for March 26th. So the group will be coming in here and meeting then. And I think the staff's got some interesting things to share with us. One thing I would like to share with you, because I think it's innovative and kind of speaks to some stuff we've got going in the region. I in Batavia have 6 senior living communities, and some of them are quite large, 500-600 people in a couple of them. And so we have this big senior living population. And our police chief came to me and noted that this group of folks we have in senior living communities are under criminal attack by all these people trying to scam them either on the computer or on the telephone. And trying to get them, they would call up and say, we're from the IRS and we just audited your tax return and it was $313 less than what it should be. So just go ahead and give me your credit card number and we'll charge that and you'll be straight with the IRS. Unfortunately, we've had a couple do that. And the first day they go for the 313, the second day they come back and try to get 1,000 off the card. So the chief said to me, why don't he and I go out and have a meeting in each one of these senior living communities? And he's telling the story about what's happening in the crime world to them. And I'm telling them a little bit about Batavia. And so we've just done the first 2 and the turnout has been absolutely phenomenal. A number of them to come and have concerns about stuff. And the one thing that really kind of jumps out is so many of them say, well, I graduated from high school before 1970 and I never saw no computer or any technology in any school classroom I was ever in. So I don't know nothing about this. And so then we get into, okay. And so now what I say, well, what's your concerns? And this one gentleman said to me, well, I really love the Illinois tollway because my daughter lives over in Arlington Heights and I can drive over there almost the whole way and get there on the tollway. But I'm concerned here because now they're taking down I always paid cash and they wanted me to have this thing on my car, which I now have, but I don't know if I owe them money or not. I'm expecting one of these days I'm going to get somebody knocking on my door saying, well, when are you going to pay this bill? And I don't know nothing about it. So I don't know where that's going, but I would just share that that's a senior citizen technology issue. Then the other one that kind of jumps out is the senior citizens say to me, I like to take the Metro train, but they've kind of changed things there now and they don't want to sell you a ticket at the station. Well, I don't know how to do that. I'm totally lost. Well, every time I get on, the conductor has to stop and he's very nice about trying to get me taken care of, but sometimes they don't have money in their pocket to make change. And so I'm making a donation to Metro just so I can ride the train. So I just share this, that this really from my town specifically is a big problem in the transportation arena, that you got this senior citizen population that's still pretty alive and vibrant and they don't have technology skills. And I don't know, I just share that here as something that I think the group should be aware of.
Yeah, I think you raised some good points here. I think one of the things that CMAP did recently was produce a report on inequities in transportation fines, fares, and fees, and recognizing that there do have to be some alternative ways. I will recognize that Cassandra Rouse has joined us I don't know, Cassandra, if you wanted to speak to any of the tollways initiatives to make sure that people can get their tolls paid.
Thank you so much. Hopefully, you can hear me. So we recognize there's a technology gap and, my mom is, in her late 70s and she talks all the time about not being one that, in her work life, use a computer. And so at the Illinois Tollway, we are very, much so focused on making sure that our seniors or populations where there may be this technology gap still have access to pay, especially since now we're an all cashless system. So, more of an immediate response is to certainly we have a customer service center that is available. We have walk-up, customer service options available as well across the system. But even more importantly, one of the newest initiatives is having, staff go out within the communities at the local libraries where we know our, technology challenge maybe patrons may be, or just those that want greater access than just, on the computer to explain the different programs we have and also make ways for them to pay. So we are, very conscious of this and we definitely have initiatives focused to address the concerns you raised. So thank you for bringing that up.
Well, when I was presented with, and several of people brought this up to me, I said, well, I think the tollway really is trying to be your friend here and they will bend over back. And they said, well, we hope they understand, we don't know nothing about no technology. So we just want to give them the dollar and cash and keep on going.
I hear it daily from my mom, so I get it. Trust me.
And Frank, if you would use your microphone too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, Cassandra.
Want to say mostly to Jim, I'm eligible to go into one of those communities, but I'm not there yet. But I was having trouble with the new system and called the helpline. Fabulous service. I mean, just terrific. You couldn't ask for better service. Guy walked me through it and boom.
We recognize the same challenges. Obviously, the fare change that we just did is the most forward-facing change in Metra's history. It touches every single passenger. We did it through industry best practice, including what's being done in Europe, and recognizing the fact that there is a technology lag in some respects. 80% of our ticket sales right now are using technology. The other 20% are either on board or still at station agents. So what did we do? We're deploying ticket vending machines to every station. It's in the process. So eventually you'll be able to pay with cash or credit card or Apple Pay or all these other different devices, and eventually even Ventra as we deploy these. In the interim, cash sales on board will still always occur. What has not ever occurred at Metra was actually credit card sales on board trains. I show up with my credit card, I want to buy a ticket, you can't. You have to go downtown and then it's the honor system. So as we evolve in this, we're going to continue to listen. Our customer service teams, incredible. We negotiated with the unions. We brought them from behind the ticket windows and brought them out and started interacting with passengers. The response has been phenomenal. People have been saying that when they can actually, now they're not just sitting behind the window and like, give me your money. They're actually having conversations with people on a daily basis. So it's really an evolution and possibly something will expand. Now we have 242 stations. We're about to have 244 stations, and we certainly can't man all of those 7 days a week, all day long. So it's really the stations that had ticket agents that have now the customer response teams in there. I think one other component of this is as we've evolved, we've only been in this since February 1st, is that we're listening. We're talking today a little bit about how can we maybe start offering that day pass through a conductor versus just only the ticket vending machine or only on the app. The data coming in is pretty impressive, but we do hear a lot of these one-off stories. I'll give you one other piece, Mayor, for your community out there. I mean, the cyber attacks are just insane. What the vulnerable population of people that are like, hey, I want to learn how to use the phone, or I want to learn how to use the computer, they need to be trained. They absolutely need to be trained. Even down at our level, every year, it's not uncommon for people at Metra to get emails that say, hey, you worked so hard this year, Jim Derwinski's got a $25 gift card heading your way. It's all scam emails. We do our best to filter it out, put up firewalls, but they break through all the time. Unfortunately, my email account, it's not that secretive. It's metrarr.com. So you can go on the website and figure that out and you can penetrate, but really the training, we try to go with our employees almost annually and just try to train them on, hey, these are the things you should be looking out for. So I think what you're doing out there, speaking to people, is awesome. I think it needs to be done on the entire region because these people that are stealing from hardworking people that have worked their whole lives and saved, it's an atrocity. And I think the laws need to change. If they're stealing from these people, they need to go somewhere else for a little bit because it's just not right.
You know, one thing I would add to this, my police chief is very active in the regional stuff. And he's telling me that they've figured out that there's a group of these folks that, and the folks that are doing the bad stuff have figured out what towns have the people, seniors with affluence who have pensions and social security and whatever have you. And we've even found that there's somebody that's made a list of these by town as to who they are, whether they're widowed or divorced or, you know, kids and whatever have you. So they're pulling tricks like they got some way they can change the voice on the phone a little bit and say, hey, grandma, I'm here and my car broke down. So can you send me some cards and there's all kinds of scams going down here. And it's much more deeper than what people think. But the senior population has been, I think the police are of the opinion there's like 12 pockets in the suburban Chicago area and maybe a couple in the city where these people are honing in on these folks because they know these are the neighborhoods where people have money. And they've researched it. They got great information. And so they're really taking these old folks for a real ride. And, you know, most, as I say, the common comment is, Jeff, I graduated from high school before 1970 and I never saw no computer or no technology in any place I ever was. And so it's just, 20 years from now, this will probably be over with and everybody will be gone that didn't get technology skills. But this really is a regional problem of some degree of intensity.
I loved your idea though about going out and talking to them, but it'd be awesome to have a resource where they could all go and, because I think they're all interested. I think they want to protect. We see that all the time. Again, even internally here, at our level, we have money, we have federal dollars that we have to protect, and you have people that are trying to get in there, multiple different ways.
Well, the chief and I got such a positive, we've only been doing this for the last week. We've done 2. And it's been so positive. The thing now I'm getting is, oh, Jeff, can't you have one for the people that don't live in one of these homes? Have a general session so any senior in Batavia that doesn't live in one of your senior communities can come and get the same. So we're going to do that. But I mean, it's really something that I didn't realize how volatile, dynamic this really is, but it really is a heavy problem in the region. Don't mean to bring it on, but it needs to be talked about.
Well, thanks for raising that. I think sometimes we're so focused on the technical things that we need to do that we don't sort of think about the intersections between the human aspects of our work. And I think that's a good reminder. Any questions on Council of Mayors? If not, we will move on. Mr. Secretary, I apologize. I'm trying to help because I know you're not in the room here, but I think we're ready for Leanne.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Apologies for not being able to be there in person. I think, as you all know, I am the non-voting appointment to the CMAP board representing the MPO. So what I do is report back on meetings that I attend on sort of your behalf. So the board has had 2 meetings since we have last met. The first was on February 14. At that meeting, we went through the 2025 comprehensive budget and work plan that was approved by the CMAP board. A copy of the comprehensive budget and the work plan are attached to your agenda today as well. And they also included the proposed 2025 unified work program as well. The board also received an update on CMAP's innovative outreach and engagement approaches. And there was discussion about with the board members about ways to engage with members of the community as they continue their work. The board also approved 4.3 million in contracts. There was also some discussion on changes to CMAP's enabling legislation to adjust the voting requirements, among some other things. And because of the connected relationship between the MPO and the board, I asked at that February meeting that they bring this item to the next MPO meeting. So there will be some discussion today, and I believe that will occur during the legislative report. And then so moving on to the March 13 agenda, which was just yesterday, the board voted on proposed legislative changes to the Regional Planning Act. So that's connected to the legislative changes that they were talking about. The previous meeting, there'd been discussion by members of the committee to bring it back. And so with more details, so there was essentially some more proposed, more refinement of what that request of the legislature might be, and they'll talk about that later. Both I noted that we wanted to make sure that we were really making, well, sorry. Then the next thing that they also talked about was the Regional Climate Action Plan, and there'll be a presentation on that for you also later today. At both of the meetings where the Climate Action Plan was discussed, I also raised that I want to make sure that there is both in the goals and in the planning and funding phases a stronger focus on public transportation, but there'll be more discussion on that later today. We also received a further update on the work around the Climate Action Plan. And then there was approval of contracts totaling approximately $576,000. They were the key items that occurred at the last two meetings. Happy to answer any questions that anyone might have.
No questions in the room, Leanne. I think, did you want to say anything about the safety summit that RTA hosted the other week?
Sure. I can sort of off topic a little bit, but since I have the floor, I guess. Thanks, Erin. The RTA did host a safety and security summit. It was like 2 weeks ago now. Very well attended. It was a invitation focused event that brought together approximately 100 people that included both advocates, community representatives from the city, city neighborhoods, as well as suburban locations, included police, and then representatives from the service boards as well. It was a really great discussion that I think allowed the collective group to discuss sort of the challenges that public transportation is facing as it relates to safety and security, and then the complexity of the issue, as well as sort of the myriad of actions and activities that could be taken. We have gathered all that information from the discussion groups, etc., and from some of the experts that we had in to talk with us. We will be compiling all that in a report. Some of the session is already available on our website if anybody wanted to hear about some of the presentations and the early discussion, and there'll be a more comprehensive report forthcoming in a month or so. So with that, I will yield back the floor.
Thank you. Secretary Osmond, I'll turn it back to you.
Yes, thank you, everyone, and thank you, Erin, for helping out. We'll move on into item 5, which is the proposed FY 2025 Unified Work Plan. And that would be handled by the Executive Director, Erin Alleman.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Last month, as Leanne mentioned, the board approved the proposed FY 25 budget and work plan. This document outlines revenues, expenses, and subawards to our partner agencies and the associated matching funds for the next fiscal year, which begins July 1st here. I'm going to go through a couple slides here, walk you through what's in the comprehensive budget, focus a little bit on the UWP program. And then we have a short video that will show that gives you sort of a flavor of the types of projects that we'll be tackling this next year here. So the Unified Work Program budget is a companion document to our annual budget and work plan, which outlines core activities that are carried out by the agency. Again, and also includes that core and competitive funded activities of the agency. So the proposed FY25 UWP budget was reviewed and approved by the UWP Committee on February 7th and by the Transportation Committee on March 1st. The Transportation Committee did recommend the final approval by the MPO Policy Committee. So again, into the highlights here. The proposed 25 budget reflects about $444.44 million in revenue to the agency. So to serve the region, we really leverage a combination of federal, state funds, philanthropic grants, local contributions, and other government funding resources here. The Unified Work Program budget makes up $27.5 million, or 60% of the agency's budget, and supports the majority of CMAP's work. These funds do require a 20% local match, and we rely on non-federal revenue sources to meet that match and to support those projects that are outside of the transportation space. Our local contributions this year will make up about $1.75 million. These are our contributions from our local government partners, including our collar counties, Cook County, the Tollway, RTA, City of Chicago, and our municipalities. We recently asked our partners to increase their contributions to support the additional funding that we received through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And so last year, our large government partners doubled their payments for this year, for last year and this year. And then we did request a 20% increase from our municipalities, recognizing that the scale and scope of their budgets are a little bit different. So we chose to do a slower ramp up with them. Note, though, that even though we increased contributions, they do only make up about 4% of our revenues here. Other funds include Clean Energy to Communities grant that we received, the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant funds, some funding for projects that are specific to Cook County, general fund contributions, IDNR, IEPA, and state planning research grants there. There's about a $1.21 million match, which is based on core and competitive sub awards to partner agencies. That's also included here. On the expense side, expenses have increased compared to last year, primarily due to the additional grant funding that we received this past year. Personnel costs did increase about 27% over the last year, partially due to inflationary measures, and for 3 additional staff members to help us meet the requirements of the grants that we've received here. Travel costs have also increased due to in-person engagement throughout the region and peer-to-peer learning. There was also a recent increase to the state of Illinois travel reimbursement schedule that's built into our budget as well. And then consulting costs in our budget for FY25 increased by about 32% and make up the most significant portion of the FY 2025 budget at $14 million. So the anticipated $7 million increase, which is double last year's budget, is due to the agency's success in securing various grants and other funding, including our Safe Streets for All funds, our Clean Energy to Communities grant, and our support for the Climate Pollution Reduction grant as well. So we've really been using PMO services, so project management advisory services, to broadly scale our consultant-led projects and really responsibly and effectively spend this increase in funding rather than just sort of growing our staff, really sort of thinking about how we balance that with consultant resources right now. Unlike other forms of governments, as CMAP as an MPO doesn't have the ability to generate our own revenues in the traditional sense. So, but part of our certification with FHWA and FTA really stated to us that our heavy reliance on the state to provide matching funds is an area of significant organizational risk. And so they recommended that we identify sustainable revenue sources to match federal planning funds. We've been trying to follow that guidance and thinking about how we continue to explore more stable, consistent local and regional funding. Also, the local funds often allow us to pursue additional federal grants where we bring funds to the region to work on other programmatic activities. We've been blessed by applying for a number of things that haven't had local match this past year because there has been such a large swell of federal funds that are available, but recognizing that we want to think about a few years ahead, we want to make sure that we are preparing for that. So you'll see in our budget this year that we've set aside about $700,000, which is dedicated truly to growing our fund balance reserve here. So next slide, many of your agencies are aware that some of our funds do get sub-awarded to our partner agencies here. So for the FY25 call for projects, we deployed a new methodology for awarding core and competitive funds to our partner agencies. And the result is a proposed award of about $6 million distributed amongst the region's transportation partners. So for core MPO activities, these are funds that include public participation not public participation, but the council's participation in the transportation improvement program, really maintaining that ETIP database, and that data on projects that's shared with CMAP. The planning liaisons program is funded through these funds for all of the councils of mayors, and other operational activities. On the competitive side this year, we awarded funds to CTA for the I-290 corridor Blue Line Improvement Project, DuPage County for their bike plan, and Metra for targeted ridership counts. And so just to give you a sense of how UWP and non-UWP funding sources have changed over time, again, our long-term goal is to diversify funding, and we've steadily increased the non-UWP revenue to 23% this year. But diversifying our fund sources does enable us to fulfill the obligations according to the Regional Planning Act, which directs the agency to carry out work in the climate, economy, and housing focus areas. You can see that the overall mix of UWP and non-UWP funding is impacted by the issuance of every major federal infrastructure bill here, the FAST Act in 2016 and IIJA or bill in 2021. So again, some of the highlights that you'll see in our budget here is the Safe Streets for All funding to unlock the implementation funding for safety, hard infrastructure funds for communities and counties across the region. Climate, again, the work that we are doing on climate action planning that you'll hear about a little bit later on our agenda here helps us unlock $5 billion for climate mitigation projects across the region. And then really just these foundational projects, we are targeting a completion of a new regional transportation plan in 2026. We really want to make sure that we are, looks like we got a little, that's okay. Data governance side of things as they get that back up here, but really want to make sure that we're doing our best job of taking care of our travel demand modeling needs, of other data analytics needs that we do for across the region. And then we do have a project to convene and coordinate our partners, IDOT and CTA, and all of the others that are impacted by the 290 corridor, and how we think about as a regional agency helping our partners advance that in a meaningful way. So with that, I am going to play a quick video, and then I'm happy to answer any questions before we seek your approval of the UWP program this year.
Well, if I don't hear any questions, I'd like to make the motion.
We're going to watch.
Oh.
But I appreciate there's a motion.
Hi, I'm Erin Alaman, Executive Director at the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning, or CMAP. CMAP works on behalf of 7 counties, 284 municipalities, and nearly 8.6 million residents in northeastern Illinois. Our work is guided by ON to 2050, the region's 30-year comprehensive plan. Its guiding principles of inclusive growth, resilience, and prioritized investment, and its suite of recommendations. A 5-year strategic plan further guides the agency's work with 3 focus areas: transportation, regional economy, and climate. Each year, CMAP develops an annual budget and work plan. New for fiscal year 2025 are descriptions of multi-year programs that include a portfolio of projects and outcomes. In this short video, we'll share some highlights from our proposed work plan that begins on July 1st, 2024.
To advance our transportation goals, we continue to invest in the Safe Travel for All Roadmap, or STAR, to improve road safety in the region, including 6 county-level safety action plans funded through the federal Safe Streets and Roads for All grant. As part of its metropolitan planning organization responsibilities, CMAP manages the Transportation Improvement Program. We evaluate applications through the call for projects and program nearly 2,000 federally funded projects in a 5-year plan.
The region relies on CMAP as an authoritative data source for forecasting and modeling. Our travel demand forecasting produces valuable data used for air quality analysis, long-range plan scenario evaluations, capital project evaluations, and the measurable impact of policy changes. The next budget year brings the opportunity to update our region's transportation plan. This federally required, cooperative, performance-driven process builds on the strong vision and goals established in OWN to 2050. With our partners and stakeholders, we'll identify additional performance targets and measurable objectives as we work towards 2050 goals that include community, prosperity, environment, governance, mobility, and inclusive growth.
CMAP is involved in two major efforts to advance the region's climate goals: the development of a regional climate action plan and a partnership with two national laboratories. We aim to better understand greenhouse gas mitigation strategies. We continue to partner with the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus on these efforts. Our upcoming work will support research and modeling to better understand the action needed to foster a clean energy transition for the region's transportation system and to advance equity goals for air quality, accessibility, and affordability.
On the economic front, CMAP continues to coordinate with the regional and local partners to strengthen our region's economic competitiveness by leveraging our many assets, including infrastructure, transportation, freight, and more. And we're making progress towards our goal of a robust and inclusive regional economy through the Greater Chicagoland Economic Partnership, a collaboration among the 7 counties and the City of Chicago.
So much of CMAP's work intersects. Many of our programs advance multiple priorities. For example, we can build resilience and protect infrastructure from climate change through research and analysis, regional and local planning, partner engagement, capacity building, and helping to secure, prioritize, and guide capital investments in climate projects for the region. At this intersection, we forecast and analyze land use at the regional and local levels. Communities rely on CMAP's community data snapshots and local and regional socioeconomic forecasts to plan for future growth. With our partners, we can create stronger links between the transportation system and the location of people, jobs, goods, and services by coordinating housing and land use strategies. And we continue to provide technical assistance to build capacity for our communities. This budget year, we will conduct municipal surveys to better understand priorities and challenges to help inform our future work. We continue to grow accessible communities across the region through training and education, technical assistance, and outreach and engagement. Also at this intersection, we will advance the Plan of Action for Regional Transit, or PART, recommendations and focus on long-term issues facing the region's transportation system with an emphasis on land use, the regional economy, and climate.
CMAP's Environmental Justice Program is also at the intersection of economy and climate. We are excited to continue our innovative equity work that strengthens relationship with environmental justice communities by directly engaging marginalized communities in long-range planning activities through our Community Alliance for Regional Equity cohorts. CMAP makes progress on our transportation, climate, and economic fronts thanks to a team that delivers services and provides strategic and operational support to the agency. This includes data, communications and engagement, program management, informational technology, finance, and human resources.
Whether meeting annual goals like the ones we've just highlighted, or strategically planning for the next 3 decades, CMAP is here to serve the region. We work in partnership with the CMAP Board, the MPO Policy Committee, and our many partners to influence policies that make Northeastern Illinois a stronger, more resilient place to live. As we embark on the regional transportation planning process, we will engage with you to develop a new, shared vision for our future. The last few years have transformed the way we live, work, travel, plan, and think. As regional planners and policy influencers, transportation decision makers, and implementers, we, as a region, together, will set a new vision and course of direction for the future.
With that, happy to answer any questions that folks have about the budget and the work program. The popcorn. Well, kudos to the comms and engagement team for putting together such a nice succinct video on our budget and work plan this year too.
Aaron, I did have a couple questions.
Yep.
CTA is really appreciative of the money we've been receiving through the UWP core and competitive grant program. We're especially appreciative that the competitive program has come back this year after we didn't have a competitive program in 2022 and 2024. So as you look to the future, there was discussion in some of the documentation about a $1 million commitment to the competitive program. How do you propose to meet that $1 million commitment if the marks for the core, take up more of the money? Will you look to balance and continue to meet that commitment? We really rely on that competitive program to do some of our planning work. So just want to know what is that commitment and how you guys will work to meet that.
Well, one of the benefits of the competitive program that we have is really that the refocus and the framework that the team has brought to that is that we want to make sure that the competitive program is focused on advancing the goals of the 2050 plan and any future regional transportation plan too. So an investment in the competitive program is an investment in us advancing the goals of our long-range transportation plan here. So because of that, we are committed to making sure that we have at least $1 million a year. It really isn't valuable to partners to have you compete for $10,000, right? That doesn't help you complete an entire project. And so while $1 million too, as project inflation grows, may or may not be the right number. But the other thing that we've been committed to is making sure that we are taking a multi-year approach to the competitive funds as well, recognizing that we want to make sure that we are thinking about the sort of scale and breadth of projects. Thinking about it in a multi-year sense also allows us to be more flexible and pre-plan for those future years. So we're committed to making sure that it's a successful program as we've revamped it this year. And I hope you'll see that in the program guidance that we've offered.
And sort of unrelated, and you kind of touched on this, but can you just talk a little bit more about the data governance that you mentioned? I think it was related to the travel demand modeling and what you said that the budget was focused on, or one of the key components of the budget?
Yeah, so one of the things you'll see in our budget here this year is we really want to get a handle on how we use our geographic information systems, the data that we have, and how we're using it across the agency and how we're making it available to our partners. And so part of that requires us to take a look at sort of the practices and make sure that we're thinking sort of about future best practices and data governance. And so recognizing that we do have a significant amount of data, we've done our best to make sure that it's in one place and not all over the place here, but really that's going to help our team be more effective in the operations of our day-to-day data governance here at the agency, and making sure that we are thinking about where we're hosting it and how secure it is and all of those sorts of things. So that's what that data governance funds are going to help us with.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Aaron, just a question on in your budget slide, it's like $14 million for consulting. Is that over multiple years, or is that each and every year?
That is for this year's budget alone.
So some of the projects in here are multiple years. So is that?
They are. So but it is for the annual fiscal year. So the $44 million and the $14 million is investments in this year's consultant costs. So things for like travel demand modeling, consultants that we'll be hiring to help us do the regional transportation plan, all of those sorts of things.
And that's from July 1st on?
That's correct. July 1st, 12 months.
Okay. And it's all of the projects listed here are that green section of your pie?
Yep.
Okay.
Well, can I make the motion?
Secretary Osmond, are we ready to, any other questions?
Has her hand up.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, Leanne.
Hi, in Cyberland. Thanks. And actually, I just wanted to kind of reiterate and echo Molly's comments. I think I really want to emphasize the desire that we should collectively, with CMAP's support, work towards getting the competitive pot to be larger to that $1 million goal. I recognize that some of the other monies are going to support, activities for the region. But I do think it is important that, instead of continuing to just expand sort of the funds, for the CMAP operating budget that we work towards getting that competitive pot larger. I know RTA has stood out or sat out on competing in the competitive pot of money because we want to ensure that as much of that money as much money as possible is available to the operating agencies in our region. And so just continuing to echo that point.
Thank you.
Anything else? Any other comments, questions? Just
Looks like-
one more comment from my end. I also echo the video is well done, well articulated. I think it's very informative. And the 2 or 3 slides we have on those budgets were pretty clear to me too. So well done. With that, I think I might have heard the Mayor Shelkin that you probably will support the motion to approve the proposed FY 2022 Unified Work Plan for the Northeastern Illinois.
Yeah, Mayor Shelkey here. I would want to make the motion to propose the FY 2025 Unified Work Program, UWP, for Northeastern Illinois. And I'd like to just add to my motion, this is just an observation. I'm in my 43rd year as mayor of Batavia, Illinois. And when I was first elected, within a short period of time, we had 2 mayors in Kane County that were terminally ill. And I got kind of brought into this whole program back when it was CATS and NIPSI. And they were 2 separate organizations. And I guess I came to the realization members of the staff didn't like each other for various different issues. And eventually I participated in the discussion of throwing all that out the window and creating a new agency, where we are here today. And I just want to make the observation that we have come so far in progressive, far-reaching, dynamic legislation and management of these systems, that how better the Northeastern Illinois area is because of the creation of CMAP and what we've done here. And I think back to the old days, this program that was just shown, that would never have been able to have been shown because there was just too much politics and too many other things floating around the region. We really have come a long way, and being the old man in the room here, I think I'm talking before some of the people sitting at this table were born. I was elected the mayor of Batavia, but it really has been a very interesting time to be involved and to see the progress that's been made. And now with the introduction of all this climate situation, I think it's ever more important that we have this in place and that we are addressing it and trying to predict where we're going to go in the future. And under Aaron's leadership and some of the rest of you leading the agencies that we have here, we're in a real good position, and Chicagoland should be very pleased with what's going on, because it could have gone in a different direction, and we could still be back in the politics of old. And I think about all the conversations we've had today about how this money is being distributed. Back in the day, it was very political how the money was distributed. Now that's kind of gone by the wayside, and we're doing it for the right reasons. So I'm very pleased to make this motion.
Yes, thank
We
you,
have
Mr. Mayor.
a second from Frank Beal.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate that. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Hearing none, the motion carries. With that, we'll move into item 6, which is the legislative update, and that will be for Laura Wilkinson.
Thank you,
Laura?
Secretary. I am excited to come talk to you guys today about what is happening in state legislation. I am going to focus my time today on the 3 pieces of legislation that impact CMAP directly. We did provide a memo about 8 or 10 other items that we're following closely that impact legislation, especially again with our partners around those issues of safety and climate and transportation. And Kasha Hart and Ryan Guchis are in the room today. So if anybody has any questions about any of those, we can take that But I will focus my time on the three impacting CMAP for the moment that we have here today. First, we had the same effort last year where we are seeking funding to be able to appropriate $5 million directly to CMAP. Again, last year we did this. We've been able to refile this bill. It does allow us to carry out a broader scope of our regional planning that we have from our state statute. So this would be things like housing, climate, economic development that are broader than our transportation work that we do through our federal MPO status. It would complement that work. But right now, as you just saw in the budget, we have to go for grants in order to really be able to do that work. And so this would allow us to fulfill our state statute. So we have looked for that $5 million appropriation this year. Leanne mentioned earlier when she was giving her board update, we also had filed some legislation that would allow us to modernize our current RPA statute. It would set down the wastewater committee that has been defunct and has now been incorporated into our work as we look at different water issues. It also would allow us to have greater efficiencies in the operations of the agency itself, which I will come back to, and it also modernizes some of the language. The language that had originally been submitted would have greater clarification on what the 4/5 vote of the CMAP board would do. We know this is really critical to our large and diverse region. And so we wanted to make sure we retained that, but be having more clarification about when that would be implemented, which would allow for a simple majority vote on things that were more directly related to operations, grants, procurement agreements, meeting minutes, etc. We had discussions at the board, as Leanne mentioned, both last month and then yesterday. And the board voted and approved that we're actually going to kind of flip that approach. And instead of clarifying what the 4/5 vote would be about, we're actually clarifying what a simple majority vote would be for. And so we are working with state legislators to amend that past language that would allow us again to have a simple majority for contracts, excluding contracts pertaining to the employment of the executive director, grants, purchase agreements, and meeting minutes, and while all else would retain the 4/5 requirement for any other actions. So that was discussed yesterday and approved, and we're moving on that. The third piece of legislation that I believe would be interest this group is that the Illinois Municipal League is pursuing legislation that would permit public bodies subject to OMA to meet remotely in cases when the public body deems it's unsafe. This is essentially documenting the allowances that were already given during COVID. They're putting that back into legislation to make sure that that's permitted going forward. It wouldn't impact mostly what we're doing right now. However, OMA does delineate certain public bodies to allow remote participation that are over a geographic size of 4,500 square miles. Well, CMAP's current jurisdiction is 4,071 square miles, so not much smaller than those other public bodies. It allows for some remote participation where you would still have public notices. You would just basically be kind of streaming and having this in another public office. So things like some library districts have this. So IML has been working and talking with us that we could have an amendatory language that would allow federally designated MPOs with a jurisdiction over 4,000 square miles to also have that same carve out. Again, it wouldn't change how we function significantly, but it would set a precedent for future use. And so we are interested in your thoughts and questions about all three of those. And again, as I mentioned, there are other legislation that we are following that we are able to comment, support, and analyze that go with our current advocacy agenda that you've approved in the past. But I'm open to thoughts and input on those three or any of the other ones we had in the memo, but just wanted to make sure we gave you time for discussion.
Any questions or thoughts in the room? Mr. Secretary, there don't appear to be any questions or thoughts. Laura.
All right. Well, thank you, Laura. And with that, we'll move into item still on items, 602, which is the Regional Climate Action Plan. And we will have Nora Beck and Martin Menninger. I hope I didn't mess up your name. Will provide an update to us on the Regional Climate Action Plan.
Thank you. Good morning, and thank you everybody for allowing me to address you today. My name is Nora Beck. I'm a Principal Policy Analyst in our Regional Policy and Implementation Division. Martin is home with a sick child this morning, so you've just got me today for this presentation. Over the past year, I've been working to help the agency map out our more.
A little closer. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm finally figuring out how to work this thing. Okay. So over the past year, I've been helping the agency map out our mid and or short and midterm goals for climate action, and I wanted to give you an update on that work this morning. Before I get into those details, I want to just reflect on recent reports that 2023 was the hottest year on record by a large margin, and we've experienced sort of a winterless winter so far here in Chicago and then elsewhere in the nation. So 2024 could continue to break those records. Scientists have reached the overwhelming consensus that climate change is here and it's intensifying. And the consequences of this are diverse. I'm sure each of you have seen the impacts. In northeastern Illinois, we are most familiar with increases in heavy rains and flooding, as well as extreme heat, humidity, and then more frequent freeze-thaw cycles in the winter. Elsewhere, other regions are experiencing intense droughts, water scarcity, rising sea levels, and severe fires, whose wildfire smoke definitely impacted us here last summer. So regardless of where you look across the world, the impacts of climate change could be very severe, but it's not too late for us to reverse course here by transitioning to an economy that reduces and eventually eliminates our reliance on independence on fossil fuels. We are seeing regional progress. The region has reduced greenhouse gas emissions by 9% since 2010. However, these decreases are not enough to achieve the reduction goals that we set in ONTO 2050, shown here in green, nor do they keep pace with the updated federal goals. And those goals really reflect what the latest science is telling us, shown here in blue, that we need to reach net zero emissions by 2050 to avoid the worst impacts. In our FY25 work plan, you'll see a lot of climate-related work. And so I wanted to take another moment to just reflect on what's motivating this focus. First, the federal government has made net zero greenhouse gas emission commitments, and we know that these are going to begin to require metropolitan planning organizations to elevate climate action in our work. And first on the docket is a new federal performance measure to set declining targets for greenhouse gas emissions on the national highway system, and I'll provide some more information about that measure in a moment. And second, there are huge opportunities available right now to tackle this work and reap the co-benefits. The Inflation Reduction Act provided funding, programs, incentives to accelerate this transition to a clean energy economy. And analysts estimate that the Inflation Reduction Act could help reduce U.S. emissions by 40% by 2030. So it's critical that we harness these investments regionally to not only reduce our emissions, but improve our quality of life and take advantage and advance other goals. So the bulk of my presentation is going to focus on how we are working with our partners to do just that. But first, let's cover this federal performance measure. So the U.S. DOT recently finalized a rule that adds another federal performance measure to the 17 that CMAP already has. And as you know, our existing federal performance measures address asset conditions, system performance, and safety on the roadway and transit systems. This new measure would require states and MPOs to set declining targets for greenhouse gas emissions on the national highway system relative to 2022. And the national highway system includes arterials and other large streets and highways, plus intermodal and transit connectors, and roughly represents 75% of the vehicle miles traveled that we have in CMAP's travel demand model. As the chair noted in his opening remarks, IDOT has already set this target in accordance with the new rule. At the beginning of February, they established a target of 2.6% reduction from 2022 to 2026 for tailpipe CO2 emissions on that national highway system. And CMAP has 6 months to adopt the targets, and we actually have to adopt 3 sets of targets based on the geographies that you see here on the slide. And again, there's no direct penalties for failure to meet these targets. CMAP aims to propose a set of targets at the June MPO Policy Committee and then the board meeting that same month. In order to do that, we have already started to develop that required 2022 baseline to understand where, using our travel demand model to understand where our emissions are, and then are exploring potential paths for how to set that target. We will be coordinating with SewerPAC and NERPC on the urbanized area targets. So you're going to hear about this approach in the coming months in advance of that June MPO meeting, where we're hoping that you'll adopt the target. Once the targets are set, they will be used to inform our regional transportation plan, and we will all have to begin identifying opportunities to reduce emissions for us to hit these targets. The targets will be in effect until 2026, when we'll have an opportunity to update them to reflect what we are learning in our climate action planning work. So that's a good segue to that work. Some of you may have heard of the US EPA Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Program, which was established through the Inflation Reduction Act. The objectives of this program are to develop ambitious plans to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, fund transformative projects that implement those plans, and then both of these activities need to advance the goals of the Justice 40 initiative. This program provides $5 billion in grants to states and local governments in two phases. The first one is this non-competitive planning grant, which I'll talk about in a moment. And then the second one is $4.6 billion in competitive grants to implement the strategies that have been identified in the planning process. So the first phase is already underway. This past year, US EPA provided formula grants to almost all the states in the nation and the largest metropolitan statistical areas to complete climate action plans. The state of Illinois, along with our neighbors in Wisconsin and Indiana, all responded to that call, and they're drafting climate action plans. And IEPA is the lead applicant or lead on that effort. For the Chicago MSA, the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus responded to our region in partnership with CMAP and the Northwestern Indiana Regional Planning Commission. We can have the next slide. And there are 3 planning deliverables that we need to do as required in the program. The first of which has actually already been completed. It's the Priority Climate Action Plan, and the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus led the development of that document. CMAP will be taking the lead on the remainder, so the development of the Comprehensive Climate Action Plan and then a status report, which allows us to track our progress. The Priority Climate Action Plan provides a list of near-term, high-priority, implementation-ready strategies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. It's designed to guide that competitive funding opportunity. That's the other portion of this US EPA program. It was finalized at the beginning of March. You can download it off the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus website. They were able to meet this rather incredibly tight deadline due to all the prior work that they've done in this space, including their 2021 climate action plan. CMAP assisted in a couple of different critical areas. We developed the greenhouse gas inventory for this larger geography. We identified some strategies that could be incorporated and a few other critical elements. The next major deadline of this program is quickly approaching, and it's the competitive implementation grants for strategies and jurisdictions that are covered by this Priority Climate Action Plan. There's significant money behind available in this effort. It's fairly flexible. We've been working with leaders across the region and the state to ensure that Illinois and the region are participating in this opportunity and put forth competitive applications. We anticipate an array of applications being proposed at different funding levels that could address major sources of emissions or tackle sectors where there's just not a lot of other funding opportunities to deal with them. So for example, the city of Chicago and Cook County have partnered and will likely be proposing an expansion of efforts to decarbonize industrial emissions, among a few other things. There's also a coalition of wastewater districts that are determined to stop flaring biogas in their treatment process and to figure out a better way to use that fuel. So we anticipate an application from them. The applications are due in less than a month, April 1st. So hopefully we'll have some great news to share on that effort pretty soon here. Excuse me. So the next project on our horizon is the development of a comprehensive climate action plan. CMAP will be leading this work in partnership with the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus and NERPC. This plan needs to identify solutions that address all the significant sources and sinks of greenhouse gas emissions that we see in the Chicago MSA. We need to be able to estimate greenhouse gas reductions from those strategies and develop implementation targets that demonstrate how the region will meet those national goals of net zero emissions by 2050. We have just a year and a half to do this work. It's due in July 2025. The CCAP is focused on laying that larger, longer term vision. And so it's not directly connected to a funding source like the Priority Climate Action Plan, but given how many states and metro areas are participating, that could be a potential in the future. I did want to take a moment to reflect on just all the sectors that need to be covered in the Comprehensive Climate Action Plan to meet the intent of this program. We'll literally need to talk about everything in this process, and we're going to have to work with an array of partners over a much larger geography to solve this crisis. The solutions are going to be hard. They have the potential to impact every resident, business, a jurisdiction in our area. Only by working together are we going to be able to identify and support the strategies that are best suited for us to reach these reduction goals. And while this work might be challenging, it also presents a critical opportunity. Many of these strategies to reduce emissions will help advance great, co-benefits, cleaning our air, making our streets safer, providing better access to job centers, lowering transportation and energy costs, and more. A lot of these goals have been at the core of our regional vision, and now the climate crisis gives us added weight and urgency to implement them. So as we gear up for the Comprehensive Climate Action Plan, we wanted to share a bit of what we are learning so far in the development of a greenhouse gas inventory for the 14 counties of the Chicago MSA. As you know, CMAP has been regularly producing a greenhouse gas inventory for over the past 15 years to help guide decision-making. This inventory is a little bit different than the ones in the past. It's more reliant on those national data and tools. That's due in part to the advancement of those tools, but also just time constraints on our end to pull local data together on such a larger geography. This also meant that we had to pick 2020 as the base year due to the availability of federal data sets. That gave us pause because we know 2020 was an atypical year. But after further digging into the data, we concluded it was still viable to use in this context. The inventory is built on modeled and reported data from various time scales and geographies. And so while it limits and so that should reduce the impacts of short-term fluctuations such as those experienced in 2020. In addition, the inventory results are comparable to those past efforts to study emissions in the region, either by CMAP or by NERC in recent years. Second, the data is available at the county level, and it adds a few more sectors to what we've previously considered. There's a lot to unpack in this inventory. I wanted to first identify the relative contributions of the sectors. And as I step through this, please keep track of any further questions that you may, thank you. You may want us to explore in the data. So in 2020, the 14 counties of the Chicago MSA produced approximately 160 million metric tons of CO2 equivalent. This inventory confirms two prominent emission sectors, industry and transportation, which comprise over 50% of our emissions. We know that our region plays an important role in as a national transportation and manufacturing hub, and these economic drivers produce significant greenhouse gas emissions and make the region a major contributor to the national total GHG emissions. Digging into the transportation sector a bit more, approximately 23% of our regional emissions come from transportation. On-road transportation is the largest source. Within on-road, over 50% are from light-duty vehicles, about 21% from heavy-duty vehicles. And again, we can talk more about this at the end of this presentation, but I'm curious about what other information you would like to see as we continue to explore this data. And to supplement our climate action planning work and to better understand how to reduce emissions in the transportation sector, CMAP, in partnership with ComEd and the Respiratory Health Association, responded to a competitive funding opportunity through the National Renewable Energy Laboratory called the Clean Energy to Communities Initiative. We were successful, and this award pairs us with Argonne and Oak Ridge National Laboratories to better understand the types and scale of intervention needed to foster a clean energy transition of our transportation system. So historically, transportation planners and utility planners haven't had to work together, right? But with vehicle electrification, we need to better understand the long-term needs and challenges of each other's systems as we both work towards a common goal of net zero greenhouse gas emissions. Achieving these significant reductions in the transportation sector are going to require a combination of strategies, including vehicle electrification, but also mode shift, operational changes. It's really going to take a number of different strategies, and it's less about the trade-offs between each one, though we need to understand the relative performance, but it's probably going to take all of the strategies to get us to these goals. This project seeks to better define not only the potential solutions, but also their costs and benefits to allow for more informed decision-making as we develop and implement our climate action plans. So in the coming years, we're going to be tackling some pretty challenging questions, and it's wonderful to have Argonne and Oak Ridge at our side. So thanks again for your time. I hope I've provided you with a solid understanding of our climate action planning work, including establishing that federal greenhouse gas performance target, and then the work that you'll hear about in the coming year and a half as we work to develop the comprehensive climate action plan. Look forward to working with you on this, and happy to answer any questions. I'm super curious about your reaction, so please share your thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you, Nora, for your presentation. I'll go ahead and ask if there are questions in the room. It looks like Mr. Derwinski.
Can you go back to the pie chart?
Sure, yeah, thanks.
Can we, I think, kind of see this too, from a perspective of not just our region, what the US is doing? I think there's some very good lessons California can teach us, and certainly Europe. Is there, as we start to come up with an action plan, there's others that have already been successful, and we should certainly kind of weigh in on that, not reinvent a wheel. The other thing is, in here, I didn't see anywhere where agricultural is, or like, you talk about wildfires. Where does that come into the equation?
Yeah, so agricultural emissions are fairly small, so they're lumped in the other category on this pie chart. They're small for us, and being a fairly built-out metropolitan area. But yeah, you'll see some of the agricultural related emissions appearing in industrial with processing or transportation, as the agricultural sector needs to drive around and process goods. So it appears in multiple different locations. I did want to talk about your first point, which is really an important one. By participating in the US EPA Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Program, we're part of this larger effort of over 70 metropolitan statistical areas working on this, as well as the states. And so it's a great opportunity for us to learn from our peers, and we're already connected to that. We're already sharing best practices and knowledge through that effort.
And then at 3.5% transportation, is that pretty much rail, or is that rail and airline?
I don't remember offhand, but we'll take note and get back to you.
And one last thing, you don't have to answer today, just it's always in my head. So we produce carbon emissions by producing electricity. If we have an electric train running down the track, do they kind of counteract each other, and how does that work? I don't need an answer today, but that's something I'd be interested in.
Yeah, so because our electricity grid is not yet fully clean, those emissions will appear in our electricity sector. That any emissions associated with vehicle charging will appear in through that.
I have a,
Mayor Schilke?
yeah, in Batavia, we own our own electrical municipal utility.
Yes.
And so interestingly, I've had visitors in my office in the last year who want to look at building service stations in Batavia that would have the ability to have they want a minimum of a 2-acre site so they can put gas pumps over here and electrical service over here and separate the two altogether. But the big problem that they tell me they have is finding sites that can have electrical servicing of the demand that may be needed, especially if you're going to entertain trucks and buses and over-the-road vehicles and whatever have you. So they think my town may be one of them that they can find a site and then get the electrical to it. So that's a big issue, I think, in trying to do some of this, is the supply of electricity. So then you get into it further, and there's some concern on their parts at the moment as to the ability of this region to deliver electricity of a magnitude. And that, you know, basically we're here depending on Braidwood, Byron, and Morris for most of the electrical from the nuclear reactors that we got in those three locations. And that there is apparently a design out there now to build a smaller nuclear reactor that you could sparsely put out in other towns and generate that. I know there was some discussion in the legislature and the governor vetoed an original idea that was going to allow for construction of those, but I think that's been changed now, and it is. But there's a lot of conversation going on about this. And I appreciate, you know, you being there and CMAP being at the kind of in the leadership role here, but there's going to be, I think, heavy discussion about it in the future as to where it's all going to go. But there's some components that have to be brought into the picture, specifically the electric part, as to where that's going to be able to be delivered to the clients, and how quickly, once, I think this is now being discussed, how quickly you can plug something in and get it recharged. Now it's 4 or 5 hours in many instances, and if you can do it in 20 minutes, that would be, but you got to make some new stuff that will allow that to happen. So you're on the
Yeah.
cutting edge of some pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah, it's a lot. I think I just wanted to refer you back to that partnership that we have with Argonne and Oak Ridge National Laboratories. I think you were raising some questions that we'll be able to explore with them, with their travel demand model and their model of the energy system. Just how does vehicle electrification and our grid work together? What are the challenges? What are the pinch points? What are the strategies that we can do to reduce some of those barriers as we proceed?
Well, I have people in Batavia right now trying to buy land with the idea that this would be eventually what gets put there, but we'll see if that happens.
Other questions for Nora or things that you're curious about as we embark on this process that we should be thinking about? Yep, Big.
Thank you. Great presentation. Thank you, Nora. When you were saying you're going to develop the, I think, regional target and maybe, if I saw correctly, like sub-targets for counties, is that correct?
Are you referring to the federal performance measure or?
Yes,
Okay.
the performance measure.
Yeah, the geography will be based on 3 different geographies. Did I just say the geography twice? The target will be based on 3 different geographies. And so 2 of them are an urbanized area. I'm looking at Russell and maybe he can correct me if I'm wrong, but they will be for the year 2026 in a comparison between what happened in 22 for these three areas.
The sort of reason for my question is, you know, as we heard today, right, we're a regional system of transportation and land use. People may live in one county, one part of the region, travel to another part of the region for work or school. So when you do your inventory and like attribution of emissions in the transportation sector, how do you determine, like, you know, someone lives in McHenry County and they're driving to Cook County for work, and then they're taking the train to, you know, Lake County. How do we make sense of those regional trips that, you know, part of it is in one county and part of it is in the other, but really the solution is a transportation integrated investment plan that we've, you know,
Yeah,
set a very nice budget
I mean,
for
it's
today.
complex, right? We in the CMAP region, we've been able to rely on our travel demand model, which is wonderful. And maybe there's some others that want to focus on how we attribute certain emissions by county based on the travel demand model. But we can provide you with more information on that. But yeah, definitely, we are not static in one spot. Emissions are flowing throughout the region.
Oh, Leanne looks like has her hand up.
I do, thank you. I'm probably exceeding my quota for speaking today, but I'm going to dive in anyway. So I know that there's been a lot of work that's already occurred to date and some good work, because all of this ultimately connects us potentially to a lot of money for our region. And some of these monies are going to come from sort of some of our non-traditional sources. So I think that's great. And that's why this work is really so important. And I will just, oh, I know, sorry, Nora, you've heard me say some of this before, but I'm just going to reiterate it for this group as well. I think it's great for us to have targets and metrics, and that's a lot of the detail that's important and sort of federally required. But we need to ensure that we have sort of those actions in the plans that will allow us to actually meet those targets. And yes, wearing my transit hat, especially as we move into some of the work around the comprehensive climate action plan, I really think it's important that, the future work and the stuff that really needs to continue to be worked on, that both the funding and prioritizing transit has a much higher priority and really a strong focus in the upcoming work that CMAP's going to embark on with all the partners. And I just sort of think more specifically, as we look at the work on the CCAP, that's, as we've noted, due next year, it needs to have, it's got those targets in there, but, transit is both a large sector that's sort of part of the impact, but we're also a big part of the solution. And so I think having a much stronger focus and prioritization of public transportation within the plan. I'll note for the record that I think in the statewide plan, there's only one single mention of public transportation in that whole plan so far. And I think if we really have any hope of accomplishing all these goals, we've noted too that we have to think comprehensively and across multiple sectors. But public transportation is really one of those key parts to that solution for all of us to meet some of those needs. Yes, we do have to think comprehensively. We have to think about, sort of mode shift. So it's not just about sort of greening the transit operations, for example, and the money is available for both the capital and infrastructure investments to do that, but it's incentivizing the way people move and travel and how we move people, goods, and services around our region. So needing to think about sort of that housing and sort of land use connection and that nexus between the two. I think that that's really important. But again, I'll just pitch that I think there's not a strong enough focus here on the role, the benefits, the virtue, and the impacts that public transportation can have as we go forward. And I think that really needs to be beefed up in the future work.
Thank you. That is our intent, Leanne. So thank you for raising it.
Anyone else? Thank you, Nora, for your presentation this morning.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. That was very informative, good discussion. On to item 603, which is the regional planning approach update. And that will be taken care of by Elizabeth Scott and Ryan Thumto.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for your, attention. I know we're coming into the last 30 minutes of our meeting together, but Ryan and I are really excited to be here to start to talk with you about what comes after Onto 2050. So I'm Elizabeth Scott, a principal policy analyst, and this is a colleague, Brian Tomto, also a principal policy analyst. And we've been working on a project to think about what comes next in terms of regional planning. We did share with you all a memo outlining some of our thoughts in advance of this meeting. Hopefully you had a chance to review. But if you did not, don't worry. We're going to kind of walk you through it today and hope to really have that conversation with you about what our thoughts are and what the opportunities are and get your feedback on it. So, yeah, as this group is no doubt aware, CMAP as an organization, as a unit of government, has two sets of responsibilities. One set is on our MPO side, which is the focus of the conversation today, which has to do with stewarding the federal transportation infrastructure process, but we also have state responsibilities given to us under the Regional Planning Act of 2005, which Mayor Shelkey and I'm sure Frank Beal can tell us all about what the process was for developing that. And on our state side, we have requirements to be the region's comprehensive planning organization and to specifically plan for the land use considerations that integrate with transportation and other kind of complex, large-scale regional issues. The Regional Planning Act says that our CMAP's comprehensive plan prepared with the region on behalf of the region should guide the physical development of the region and establish the foundation for all planning in the region. So we have to hold both these things, facilitating an effective federal transportation investment process, and then also giving forward guidance on the nature of change and the structure of the region to help set the context for planning. So understanding these things, next slide, please. You know, beyond what's required in statute, there's a lot of benefits to all of us investing the time. I mean, there is cost to developing these things, but really it's more bandwidth, attention, effort that is critical here. This is an opportunity for us to come together as a group to get the, opinions of the public and have deep conversations about who we are as a community and where we're going. And having these conversations periodically can help us kind of stay the long arc path that can help this region have the best possible outcomes and on a 30, 50, 100-year timeline. Because you all, I'm sure, are very, very aware that the investments that you are shepherding and making, these are 30-year investments, these are 50-year investments, these are 100-year investments. So what will it mean in the future? That's part of what CMAP is supposed to cultivate a conversation around on behalf of all of us, because we do have time and we do have the mandate to do that. And I think, it's a unique organizational position that we're very honored to hold, because I know that for those of you who are every day in it serving people, what is going to happen in 30 years is not like the highest priority on your list of 100 million things that you have to do. So that's one of the things that we're supposed to do to help cultivate that conversation periodically. So how do we get here? As already came up in the meeting today, CMAP was created by merging two organizations, CATS, the Transportation Planning Organization, and NPSI, the Land Planning Organization. And, through the effort of the region to do this, CMAP was created in 2005. And as CMAP, we to this point have created 4 regional plans that fulfill these responsibilities. So both the MPO responsibilities and the State Comprehensive Planning Agency responsibilities. And how we have done it over the last roughly 20 years is make one really large plan that covers everything and is a major effort that tries to address the interconnections between all the issues that we care about and do that future focused conversation. Go-To 2040 was a huge success for the region. It won the National Planning Award. It set a model. This is when we created the local technical assistance program that everybody is such a fan of. So that planning process was a big success. But because we have to make a regional transportation plan to meet those MPO responsibilities every 4 years, what we ended up was in more of a cadence where we would do a big plan, and then we would do a little plan that was the update of that big plan so we could meet those MPO responsibilities. And we've gone through 2 cycles of that. So the Go-To 2040, and then maybe more familiar to some of you, Onto 2050, which was adopted in 2018. So yes, we've been in a space of make a big plan, make a little plan, make a big plan, make a little plan. And after we adopted the Onto 2050 update in 2022, staff started thinking about, what do we like about this structure? What do we not like about this structure? What will serve us best in the future? And started to try to, do some reflection on where we want to be going in the future. Next slide, please. And so now, as we heard throughout this meeting, Onto 2050 is the policy set that is the adopted policy of the region. These policies were developed in 2016, 17, and adopted in 2018. And we have refreshed them in some ways, but I'll say as somebody who worked on that plan, I'm extremely proud of the work that we did on it, but time has passed and the world has changed, and it's not as probative of who we are now and what is facing us as it was, when it was newer. So just thinking about how do we do these processes and what best serves us is what Ryan and I have been working on. And then I think I preempted my next slide, so let's skip over it. We did a lot of stuff to make that plan. It was a big plan, and I think a big success. It took a lot of our capacity. But so in the conversation of how do we carry out these responsibilities, we've been doing some thinking, and now I'll turn it to Ryan to talk to you. We're going to tag team to keep it interesting because it's the end of the meeting.
Thank you. So as Elizabeth was saying, staff, as we've been looking to the next plan, we took a moment to kind of ground ourselves and reflect on where we're at in the moment. Elizabeth mentioned, we've had some challenges. The context has changed since On to 2050 was adopted. We've had the pandemic. We've had to address funding issues with transit and changes in the way people move throughout the region or telecommute to work, things like that. We also have had the incredible opportunities such as the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, or IIJA, or bill. And with that has come a lot of opportunity, but a lot of challenges as well of how we've had to rapidly mobilize to try to be able to successfully apply and deliver this funding. And so we've been reflecting on all of that as we've been thinking about the next planning effort. And it's caused us to ask some key questions. And so these are things like, how can we fulfill those state and federal responsibilities while also remaining flexible to be able to pivot when needed, to seize these opportunities and to address those challenges as they arise. We've been asking, how can we build on the success of Go to 2040 and On to 2050? And how can we work to further break down planning silos to promote more equitable engagement while avoiding stakeholder fatigue? I think ultimately the question we've been asking is, how can we think about all this a little bit more differently? Next slide. So to help us to start thinking through how to answer these questions, we looked to some of our peers across the United States. This illustrates three that we're going to highlight for you today, but there are numerous examples of different approaches that MPOs like us have taken. So we chose these three, which are located in Atlanta for the Atlanta region, the Minneapolis, St. Paul Twin Cities region in Minnesota, and the Puget Sound Regional Council, which is in Seattle for the Seattle-Tacoma region. We highlighted these because we thought they provided three different variations of a similar approach that we found addressed a lot of the challenges and opportunities that we were looking to figure out how to be able to create an approach that best addressed those. So on the next slide, just quickly looking at the Met Council, you can see here that they are in a similar situation where in addition to their MPO responsibilities, they have a lot of other state mandated responsibilities, different from what we have. They have operational responsibilities built into that too. But I think fundamentally at the planning level, you will see that they have this overarching vision that they create, and then subplans underneath them that target into specific responsibilities that they can really dig in and provide the detailed analysis and policy development that's needed to really address these issues. And they can be updated on different cadences that help meet the changing dynamics that might be specific to one topic area. On the next slide, you can see an example of how Puget Sound Regional Council approaches it. Again, they have a vision, this overarching vision, that then informs their regional transportation plan and their regional economic strategy. These plans have to be consistent with the region or with the regional vision, but again, are updated on different cadences. And it's important to note that they're able to have this flexibility that as something arises, even though they have the standard, like this is how often we update this plan, they can do so on a more frequent basis when needed, when the need arises, with the challenges that pop up along the way. And so the next slide, with the Atlanta Regional Commission in Georgia, they again also have similar thing where they have additional state responsibilities in addition to their MPO responsibilities. And here they have what they refer to as their family of plans approach, with an Atlanta regional plan being their kind of overarching vision for the region, and then three primary plans that, when combined, make up the comprehensive plan, with a bunch of additional subplans that kind of form a constellation around it that help feed into those three primary plans. So this brings us to a proposal or approach that CMAP is moving forward with. As evidenced by our peers, this approach of having a vision, overarching vision, where we can have those regional conversations of the challenges and opportunities, path forward for how we want to identify key values and principles and how we'll feed that into solving those challenges that can occur in a vision kind of setting place. But then we can have subplans that help create spaces for more in-depth, detailed conversations. To Leanne's point, where you can have some guiding, it's important to have those goals and performance measures and things like that, but you also need those detailed actions and strategies that really build out how we're going to address the challenges and seize those opportunities. And so on the next slide, you'll see kind of what we have in mind right now. Still very much kind of a work in development and the actual way to visualize this. But the idea here is that we would have a vision plan that is developed with a suite of subplans around different topic areas to address those specific needs. And so these subplans would focus on things like transportation, regional economy, climate. We just heard from Nora with the capital or the comprehensive climate action plan. That's an example of what one of these subplans would look like. And on the next slide, we think that through this, we'll see a series or a whole host of anticipated benefits that, as you can see here, we've broken down into kind of two different categories: product improvements and process improvements. And so for the examples of ways that this approach could help improve the planned product, we have enhanced public outreach and stakeholder engagement. Developing a vision for the region provides an opportunity for high-level public outreach, while developing subplans enables more extensive engagement with key stakeholders on curated topics. This approach would be more geared towards encouraging meaningful and equitable participation from diverse stakeholders, while fostering deeper collaboration and consensus building. It would also provide an opportunity for the region to do that deeper analysis that we talked about. We could have these topic-specific subplans that enable the region to conduct in-depth analyses and assessments within each area, leading to a more thorough understanding of the challenges and opportunities, the potential impacts, and this depth of analysis would enhance the quality of decision-making and ensure that strategies are evidence-based and actionable. It would also provide an opportunity for more tailored solutions. Different issue areas, when organized, or would require unique approaches and solutions. Having separate subplans allows the region to dig deeper and tailor those strategies and policies to specific needs and priorities for each topic area. So I think an example of this could be when we're talking about climate, the work happening in the climate action plan. The strategies in the transportation area look much different than how do we adapt our economy or our housing or those different sectors out there. We need to make sure that there's communication between these activities, but we also need to be able to have a space for the detailed actions that implementers in that sector can take to be able to have a plan that helps move us all forward in the same direction. I would also provide for improved implementation and monitoring. So having these separate subplans would help facilitate implementation and monitoring efforts so that progress can be tracked and evaluated within each topic area. This would allow CMAP and its partners to identify successes, challenges, and areas for improvement, and again, to really have data-driven decision-making. Additional improvements are in the kind of process category. So flexibility and focus. By having a separate subplan, the region can maintain flexibility to address new and existing challenges and opportunities focused within specific topic areas while staying aligned with that overarching vision. Additionally, topic area subplans would no longer be tied to that 4-year update cycle that's required for our transportation responsibilities. So while for the transportation plan, we have to do that on a 4-year cycle to meet our federal requirements, there's other plans that don't need to have that level of analysis done on that 4-year cycle. Things like freight might be more appropriate for a longer cadence, or housing or whatnot. So we can really tailor the effort that's most appropriate to the topic area of that subplan. We also think will help us to advance efforts to break down planning silos. A single comprehensive plan document requires that all hands on deck level of effort And has our subject matters, focused on specific topics where they have that expertise, which limits ability for that cross communication across issue areas. And it's not just in terms of CMAP staff, but it's also our partners who we're engaging with. If we have transportation conversations happening here, we have the transportation folks in that room. And at the same time, we have folks talking about something else somewhere, in another room. And this will provide an opportunity to kind of spread that out a little bit and make sure we're able to create forums where there can be that cross subject matter pollination of ideas and solutions. And finally here, really want to focus in on the alignment with regional goals. By developing subplans that are guided by the overarching vision for the region can ensure alignment with our long-term goals and priorities. This coherence enhances the effectiveness and impact of the region's planning efforts, leading to more sustainable and equitable outcomes. With that, I'll hand it back over to Elizabeth.
Yeah, so practically speaking, what are we doing and to put more concrete steps forward on action to kind of continue to go in this direction? So we'll talk about a little bit and pause for your comments, but next steps. So next slide, please, sorry. Okay, fabulous. So I'm the principal overseeing this project. We had a meeting with the staff to start to work on it yesterday, the first one. So this is kind of where we are timing wise. And I'll just say from our perspective, it's a very exciting moment when we have the privilege to work on the regional issues like this. And what we're going to do is have a multi-step process. I'll be honest with you, we are creating this. We are creating something new, and it's going to be with your advice and guidance that we kind of course correct and figure out how we're actually going to do this in the most effective and impactful way that we can for the region that carries forward, all of our responsibilities and balances people's, the things that you care about in terms of how we're spending our time and the leadership CMAP is providing in the region. So practically speaking, we have one activity set where we're going to do a comprehensive look across the region and do a analysis of existing conditions. My planners in the room will know that, you can't know what you need to do unless you start with where are we at. So we're going to be doing that analysis and sharing it out with you. We're going to conduct a large-scale scenario planning analysis to start to understand what are the long-term threats and opportunities, grounded in fact, not like I read this in the newspaper or someone said to me this might be the case. Like, what does the research actually say about how climate migration may affect our region in the future? And what do we need to do to be prudent and responsible, responding to what the best data and information tells us about what would happen if that future comes to pass? So we're going to be exploring these types of trends and drivers and thinking about what the year 2050 may hold for us and how we need to back up from that to make good decisions now. I think it's going to be really fun and it's going to be really interesting, and we'll be talking with you all about it to the extent that you're available to participate in that. We're also going to have a major effort around civic dialogue, of which you all will be participants, but we're also going to spend a great deal of time talking to the public about, in this moment, how do they feel about their communities, quality of life, what they care about, what motivates them, what they want to see from the government in this region, where we are in constant communication with people and in service of the region, but it is valuable to spend money and time actually getting out there and like really, really talking to people. So that's a piece of this too that we're planning to do. A lot of things have changed since COVID. So like, what's a detailed understanding of how people are feeling and what the variations are across areas? How can we get a representative slice of different people and their concerns to bring that in and incorporate it into the regional conversation? And then finally, we're going to think about how all of these things come together, what the future may hold, what people say they care about. And we're going to create a document that can serve as a kind of a North Star and be a place where more detailed work that is intended to be research to action oriented, where it can all find coherence. We'll say, as a region, we care about climate change in this way. Like, how, what do we have to say about how we care about how we want to respond to this stuff that's in front of us? We'll have that conversation and come to that place and create a plan that can help articulate those things and guide us in the way, not of you're going to change the percentage, points awarded on this program in this way in this moment, but more like this is the intention of where we want to go, where we want to be, and what are the values that we're going to use to make decisions when they're important and they're difficult. So that's supposed to be a more evergreen. And then all of the other plans will make a reference to that, be coherent with that, but advance it in time appropriate ways that are actionable. Because we want to be relevant. That is why we're doing all of this. It's not supposed to be an academic exercise. It's supposed to help aid decision making. So this is kind of the project that we are thinking of to this point. And there's going to be a lot that we're going to be figuring out, but this is the thing that we're mounting and beginning, and would love your thoughts and feedback and comments. And if anybody wants to have a further conversation, that is totally welcomed.
Oh, thank you, Elizabeth and Ryan. I'll just share that we did have a pretty robust conversation about this at the Transportation Committee meeting a couple of Fridays ago, if I'm not mistaken, or last week Friday, I can't remember. So delegates from your organizations did give us, and I think the team, a lot to chew on in terms of where we're thinking of heading and how this body and our transportation stakeholders across the region can help inform this process. So with that, feedback, questions from this body?
Yeah, and then I will also say, maybe preemptive question is, yes, the regional transportation plan is moving forward according to statute. Ryan is overseeing that work. We are doing it now. So that's also part of it that we want to talk with you about. And we have slides on it. We also have 4 minutes.
Go ahead, Vig.
Hi, thank you. This is really great. And I think the research you did is excellent with the peer cities. City of Chicago is like a mini CMAP, right? We have 77 community areas, 50 wards. So it's some of a taste of balancing different stakeholder opinions, vision, and values. Sort of 2 cents from our experience going through many of the similar processes, right? Thinking of our past plans that we've had at CDOT, at the city. In our engagement, in recognizing that there are 77 communities, 50 wards, pretty quickly come to, we kind of work on like a what, how, and why framework, and generally come to understanding why, the values, and what, the tools, quickly, right? And as technical practitioners, I think the tools keep emerging, but there's a pretty good set of tools from, be it climate, electrification, be it safety, be it moving transit. We kind of know what we have and what we want to get out there. And then the values are more or less evergreen, right? In terms of equity, safety, sustainability, inclusive development and growth, strong economy. How, right? Making decisions is when we have alignment, even though on those 2 things, getting to the how we make decisions, when you can unlock that, stuff can get done quickly. Maybe I'll use the mayor's example of the electric vehicle gas station. If a proposal comes like that, a theoretical question, right? Is it on the city of Batavia electrical utility to do all that work? Or is that something as a region we say, hey, someone's raising their hand that they want to be at the forefront of this type of technology and investment? We will take the people who raise their hand first, right? Or do we work off a list where we say we have technical criteria and we've established these are our top 10 and we're going to go through those top 10? Using this process to get at some of that, at the right types of how questions and right types of regional alignment around decision making so that we can go faster together will be very valuable. And I think maybe that a small semantic thing in some of the slides you showed, I noticed some regions have like a plan with a strategy around it versus a plan with a plan around it. And then there are strategic plans. So without getting too semantic, I think that word strategy is really important though, because it can help bridge those 2 things of what you showed at the center, which is the most visionary, and it's the why. And then that constellation, which is, as you mentioned, the most technical, that some stakeholders want to engage really deeply with that level. But I think a lot of stakeholders are looking to see the way decisions are made and the principles and values those decision-making processes reflect, gives them the comfortability to move, and then we can get the investments we all agree on faster.
Were you in our team meeting yesterday? No, that's really great feedback. Thank you.
All right, Leanne. And I know we don't have too much time left here, so,
Yeah,
but I will
I'll be
recognize that. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I was mostly speaking to folks in the room who may want to weigh in here. So we'll do a couple
Okay.
questions, but this is going to come back and be on your agenda for multiple meetings. So don't worry if you miss out on contributing right now, there will be more time. So Leanne, the floor is yours.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Just to sort of bring back, I know there's been a lot of conversation at Transportation Committee, et cetera. And sort of just actually harken back to the point Mayor Shelkey raised much earlier in the meeting, that, we've come so far as a region in terms of, back in the day of merging CATS and NIPSI into one organization and creating this very broad and comprehensive approach to thinking about our land use and our transportation and our regional comprehensive plan. And while I hear some of and understand and appreciate some of the challenges and concerns that have sort of been reiterated and sort of this new strategy and approach, I just, for the record, want to just note that I hope this, though, doesn't end up taking us backwards into sort of these separate and segmented plans. I get sort of the overarching vision and the values to sort of guide, but I don't know, just in the pit of my stomach, I worry that we might be regressing back to sort of these segmented siloed plans of old. And I really I hope that we don't end up there. So I know that that's been a comment that's been raised in the past, but I just echoing that again.
Yeah, thank you. We've been doing a lot of thinking about that and what it means to carry out these responsibilities. And I think, Leanne, that's a very important point that you raise. Something that needs the highest level of attention when we think about how we're going to do this.
Anything else from the room before we move on? Secretary Osmond, it looks like no other comments in the room at the moment.
Great, thank you, everyone. A very robust discussion on at least 2 or 3 of those complex items. So I appreciate everybody's participation. We are down to the final stretch, and wanted to put it out there that is there any other business before this committee? Any other business? Okay, hearing none, we will take public comment from individuals who are in the audience first, and followed by remote participants if they wish to make any comment.
Looks like we have no public comments in the room, but we do have Garland Armstrong raising his hand virtually.
Absolutely, go.
Good morning, Secretary Osmond and everybody at MPO. It's Garland Armstrong, formerly of Des Plaines, now living in Des Moines. I just want to give kudos to Mayor Shelkey for being mayor for 43 years, and I just want to say to him, you rock, Mayor Shelkey, because me and Heather really miss you, but you keep on going and you make sure have the voice for people with seniors there who are disabled, and making sure that they really understand the new technology, like you said, that they're not digitally technically or digitally ready, because I think they need a lot of training on how to be a part of it since they're out of touch. But make sure to have someone who can help them train it in your community so they can be well prepared and not be falling back. And also I had a little concern about especially the flooding part, especially for the disability community in the 6th region area. If there's flooded anywhere, like on the buses or the trains, and for those who cannot speak clear English, how can they be well prepared for it if the unthinkable happens? So will they be able to help? Will you be able to help them communicate from all different languages so they can be well prepared if the unthinkable happens? Because God forbids, if one thing happens and another one, are they going to be up and be ready for it or not? Because that is my biggest main concern, because I don't want to hear it nationwide, especially where I'm at right here in Iowa, because saying what happened to the neighboring state and say, oh no, they wasn't well prepared for it. But I hope you can communicate with them, for those who cannot speak clear English and the disability community, so that they can be well informed and what's the warning signs to be well prepared for and how to educate them, because they sometimes feel like they're being disconnected. And what can we do about that so that they can understand it, so they can be a part of it and be well informed of it? So I'll be glad to answer any questions or comments. What I said to y'all, if you have any suggestions down the road for it.
Thank you, Garland.
Anything for Garland? Garland, we truly miss you. We hope to see you soon. Come on back to Illinois, and I echo everything you said about our good mayor here. He's a great man. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, with that, the next meeting is going to be scheduled for, as usual, on a Thursday, June 13, 2024.
You are.
Okay. Last
good morning.
item. Can you guys hear me still?
Yes, we can.
Good morning.
All right.
Are we doing a public comment session?
Oh, there's a public.
Hold on just one. Is there someone else wishing to make public comment? If you could,
Sounded like.
Yes, I was waiting for the opportunity.
oh yeah, if you could please
to
go ahead and identify yourself, I'd appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. John Paul Jones. I'm the Minister Steward with Rural Inglewood, and also president with the Sustainable Inglewood Initiatives in Inglewood. Just wanted to, I really appreciated this session today. It was very informational and add a lot of value to what we're trying to get accomplished on the South Side to increase a real focus on green initiatives and transportation efficiencies and a host of other things. I appreciated the conversation about the regional strategies, because we have to figure out ways to get people on the same page about current conditions. And I think oftentimes we're so inundated with so many other issues, but yeah, oftentimes we still working off of 2021 or 2022 data. So as much as we can kind of get a quick update about what's happening currently, it helps the whole region, and particularly all these new commissioners that are being appointed by the city of Chicago. One of the board members mentioned about 77 communities and 50 wards. And that's an important information to keep in mind when we talk about Chicago. But one of the new areas that's coming up, which is the Chicago area 78, is taking a lot of political advantages at the state and local level, and they are oftentimes far removed from public conversations about what they're doing and the actions they're making across the region. And so as you look at these regional strategies, and I know I'm not a big advocate oftentimes of just empowering academia, but the Discovery Partners Initiative is having more impact on us than we know. And we got to recognize, we got to sit these guys down. These universities are sitting and they have all these clusters within their universities, and they're making all sorts of federal and state deals. And we have to figure out how could we be on the same page. Because that whole unit has its own game plan, and it's far removed from any public participation process that we even talk about. And so we just want to keep that in mind, that we have to include them into a regional strategy, have them be a part of a much broader public participation process as we move forward into 2050. And so, because it impacts us on the south side. And the last commissioner of the Department of Public of Planning made a key point before he departed that unit, that Chicago 78, is going to have to be a part of a much broader conversation on the south side. And as we know now, it's impacting the region. Because the world synced, particularly on the south side, we all seen when Jerry Weinstein went down to Springfield and how he focused in on the state leadership. And many people learn from that process. And it's going to be a whole new ballgame about how we engage with Springfield, even for CMAP. How will we engage with Springfield to do the right things when it comes to public spending and even climate change and transportation? They're still sitting on a lot of money when it comes to rebuilding Illinois, but they're quiet about it, and they're not helping us really think through how they're going to spend their dollars. And so it's just a great time to talk about regional planning, and I think we have a great team at CMAP that can move us forward along with the Mayor's Caucus. Again, I thank you for this opportunity and good work. Good work.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Appreciate that. So with that, hearing no comment, we'll come to the adjournment of this meeting. Can I get a motion to adjourn, please?
Frank Beal moved.
Ms. Killen second.
Thank you.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye. All in favor, say.
Motion carries, Mr. Secretary. We're
All
adjourned.
right. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.